Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today I want to talk about Weird Al, because it was on this day in 2014 where his Mandatory Fun album became his first ever #1 album. But there was a long road to get there, and of course, you could argue that his peak popularity in terms of cultural penetration happened much longer before that. But he's someone who's never really gone out of style in spite of being conspicuously unstylish in every way. Now, Weird Al is without doubt the most famous musical parodist of all time, but parody in music is something that's as old as music itself, and it's related to a lot of other phenomenon in music, namely something called quoting, where in a piece of music, whether composed or improvisational, the musician will reference an older piece of music by inserting bits of it into the piece one is playing. This is very common in jazz, where, for instance, in the middle of an improvisational solo, you'll insert a couple of measures of a well-known tune. And this itself is not parody in the traditional sense, but it is in the sense that it makes people smile because they hear something familiar in an unfamiliar situation. And that really is the basis of all parody, the familiar mixed with the novel. And for Weird Al, he was a natural at this. It was in '79 where he really got his first hit with My Bologna. And this was, of course, a parody of the Knack's big, huge, stratospheric hit of the time, My Sharona, a fun modern love song. And Dr. Demento was the person who gave Weird Al his start, as we all know. He was and remains, because he does his stuff online now, but he was a DJ that specialized in novelty, weird, and parody records. And he had one of the biggest personal libraries, and still does, of some of these by people like with names like Nervous Norvis, and people calling themselves Napoleon and all sorts of weirdness. And Dr. Demento put a lot of Weird Al's early stuff on his radio show, but it was when the Knack met him and loved the parody that he did of My Sharona that they put him in touch with a record label, and he just went from strength to strength from there. Now, his career is interesting for many reasons, but one of the things that I find interesting is the reaction of mainstream major musicians when they find themselves the target of Weird Al's parody. Some absolutely love it, and some did not. Most, it seems, really did like it. And what really made him into a superstar is when Michael Jackson absolutely fell in love with Weird Al's music. A lot of people don't know that Michael Jackson loved comedy, and he particularly liked the kind of innocent comedy that Weird Al is associated with. Now, Michael Jackson was friends in Benny's later life with the great comedian Benny Hill. Michael Jackson loved particularly the slapstick routines that Hill did. And he also loved Weird Al, who was much more of a PG comic, which might be another reason for his success. In an age of Tipper Gore and parental advisory right round the corner, Weird Al managed to generally keep it clean while sneaking in a few double entendre here and there. But Michael Jackson was a huge fan and was very happy to see Weird Al do Eat It as a parody of Beat It, and later when he did Fat as a parody of Bad, Michael actually let him use the original costumes in the set where the Bad music video was shown. A few artists weren't so obliging. Prince never allowed himself to be parodied. Nirvana said, well, please don't make it about food, but when he made it about how the lyrics to Smells Like Teen Spirit were unintelligible, they loved it. Coolio had a love-hate relationship with Al. At first, he thought that being parodied by Al hurt his street cred, but later realized that when you're parodied by Weird Al, it means that you have a really big hit, which Gangsta's Paradise in the middle of the '90s absolutely was. And so the next question really is, how come Weird Al has endured for so long? And I think the reason is he's become part of the cultural fabric. He's become almost like an adjunct of the music industry itself, whereby whether you're a disco, soul, funk, rock and roll, folk, or whatever kind of artist, if you reach a certain threshold of success, Weird Al will parody you. It's kind of better than winning a Grammy or something like that, because it's frankly more unique and it does help introduce the song to new listeners, particularly to some of the younger listeners. And I think that's important. Now, the question is, would a Weird Al who comes around today be as successful? And I'm not sure. I think there's several ways to address that. On the one hand, comedy is one of the most eternal of all arts, and parody and satire in particular, because however pompous or however strange or however stupid the prevailing pop culture of any society gets, there will always be room to parody it. And so, in that sense, there will always be a kind of Weird Al. On the other hand, I'm not sure if something as PG, something as sort of kid friendly, something as unwilling to push the envelope, but just be fun and clever. I don't know if that would be enough in an age where nothing really shocks us anymore. So it's not so much that parody is gone, it's that people now expect parody to be more scathing. I think that we're living in an age where comedy either is not comedy at all, but is just social commentary masquerading as commentary, or you have the super edgy stuff. And if it isn't really pushing huge boundaries, people aren't interested. That middle ground of, family friendly comedy isn't really there anymore, which might explain why certain television shows are struggling, because television is a kind of an outdated format where you can't get too edgy, but if you're really just preaching a political point of view but disguising it as comedy, not many people who want to laugh will listen. People who want to either be informed about your political view, or those who already share it will tune in, but not those who want comedy. So maybe that sort of middle of the road style parody is something that is just sort of stuck in the 20th century, and that while Weird Al has a great legacy and will always sell out concerts, maybe it will be hard for someone with that kind of innocent humor to make it big today. Not sure what you think. Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and we will see you next time.